My name is Nora Ellison, and I am 33 years old, and this past Christmas, I put down my fork at the dinner table and told my family something I had been keeping for 5 years. I want to start with the putting down of the fork because it is the moment everything became different, and because what came before it and what came after it only makes sense in relation to that specific gesture, the fork going down, the quiet that followed. The 41 family members who had been talking and eating and doing the specific, comfortable things that families do at Christmas dinners, and who stopped when I put the fork down, because something in the quality of the silence that followed communicated that what was coming was not the usual kind of thing. My Uncle Gerald had said, approximately 40 seconds before I put the fork down, that Nora had always been the ungrateful one. He had said it in the specific voice of a man who is making a general observation that he knows is directed and who is enjoying the precision of that direction without having to take responsibility for it. He had said, "Some people take everything a family gives them and give nothing back." He had used a look rather than my name. The look was enough. The table knew who he meant. I had been paying my parents' mortgage for 5 years, monthly, anonymously, every single month for 60 months without missing one and without telling anyone, and without receiving any acknowledgement, because no acknowledgement was possible when nobody knew I was doing it. My parents thought it was a bank correction. That is what my father had called it the first time. A bank correction, some adjustment in the interest rate or the payment schedule that he did not fully understand, but that had resulted in the payments being covered in a way he had accepted with the gratitude of a man who does not look too carefully at good news, because good news is rare, and questioning it feels like tempting fate. Before I tell you what I said when I put the fork down, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city in the comments. I love knowing where you are when you listen to this. Now let me take you back to how I found out about the mortgage. I found out about the mortgage by accident on a Tuesday afternoon 5.5 years ago. I had been at my parents' house helping my mother sort through some paperwork, the kind of accumulated domestic administration that builds up in households where both people have been too busy to deal with it, and that eventually requires an afternoon and a willing child to organize. I was going through a stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and I found 3 letters from the mortgage company. Not statements, notices. The specific kind of notices that mortgage companies send when payments have not been made, and that are written in the careful, escalating language of institutions that are trying to communicate urgency without immediately producing panic. 3 months. The account was 3 months behind. The next communication, the letter implied, would involve a different category of action. I put the letters down. I went to find my mother. She was in the other room, and I asked her, as carefully as I could ask it, whether everything was all right with the house. She said, "Of course, everything is fine." She said it in the way that people say things are fine when they are not fine, but when they have decided that not fine is their problem to manage and not yours to know about. I did not push it that day. I went home. I sat at my kitchen table. I thought about 3 months of missed payments and a notice that mentioned the next category of action, and parents who had been in that house for 30 years and who had raised me there and who were not going to tell me they were in trouble because they had spent 30 years not asking for things and were not going to start then. I called my financial advisor the next morning. I explained what I wanted to do and why, and asked about the mechanics of making anonymous payments on a third-party mortgage. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Nora, that is a significant commitment." I said, "I know." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I am sure." She said, "Let me look into the structure." The structure was established within 2 weeks. A third-party payment service that allowed me to cover the monthly amount without my name appearing on any statement my parents would receive. The account was set up. The first payment was made. My parents received a notice the following month informing them that their account had been brought current. My father called it a bank correction. My mother called it a miracle. I was the miracle. I have been the miracle every month for 60 months. And at Christmas dinner, my Uncle Gerald told the table I had always been the ungrateful one. I want to tell you about the 5 years, because the 5 years are not only a financial story, and I want to be honest about what they contained beyond the monthly transfer. The 5 years contained every Christmas dinner where my Uncle Gerald made his observations about who gave back and who did not. They contained the specific dynamic of a large extended family where generosity was discussed regularly and valued loudly, and where the people doing the most discussing tended to be the people doing the least giving. They contained my cousin Marcus, who organized fundraisers for himself and called them family initiatives. They contained my Aunt Patricia, who volunteered at things that had photographers present, and who mentioned her volunteering at every gathering in case anyone had missed it. They contained my parents, who were the people I was doing this for, who ate Christmas dinner in the house they almost lost 5.5 years ago, and who had no idea that the house was still theirs because of a payment their daughter made on the first of every month, with the specific, quiet consistency of a person who has decided to do something and is doing it, without requiring an audience. I did not tell them because telling them would have changed the nature of what I was doing, not the practical nature, the emotional nature. If my parents knew I was paying the mortgage, they would feel the weight of it differently. They would feel indebted. They would feel the specific, complicated gratitude of people who have been helped by their child and who carry that help as a different kind of burden. I did not want them to carry it. I wanted them to live in the house. I also did not tell them because I did not need credit for it. I want to say that clearly because I think the version of this story where I reveal the secret and expect to be celebrated misunderstands why I kept the secret in the first place. I kept it because the keeping was the point, because doing something generous without needing anyone to know you did it is the purest form of the thing. Because I am my mother's daughter, and my mother is a woman who has spent her whole life doing things for people without requiring acknowledgement, and I learned from her even when she did not know she was teaching. What I did not anticipate was that the keeping would cost me in the specific way it cost me, which was that without knowledge of what I was doing, my family was free to construct their own version of what I was doing, which was nothing. The Christmas dinner was at my parents' house. It always was. My mother insisted on hosting, and my father supported whatever my mother insisted on, and the result was that the house I had been paying for had become, in the years since the mortgage was brought current, the gathering place of the entire extended family twice a year, and was spoken about by the gathered family with the specific proprietary warmth of people who feel ownership over a space they have spent time in without having contributed anything to the maintaining of it. 42 people. The long tables my father had set up in the dining room and the front room, connected, the food my mother had been cooking since Thursday, the specific smell of a house that had been turned fully toward hospitality and that contained 30 years of Christmases in its walls and furniture, and the particular arrangement of things that my mother had not changed since I was a child because she saw no reason to change what worked. I had arrived at noon. I had helped in the kitchen for 2 hours. I had set up the children's table in the corner and arranged the chairs and had done the specific, unglamorous preparation work that someone always has to do and that never gets attributed to the person who did it because by the time the gathering is in full swing, the preparation is invisible. The dinner was served at 2. I sat in my usual seat, the one I had occupied at Christmas dinner for 33 years, 3 seats from my mother, diagonally from my Uncle Gerald, who sat across the table with the specific, settled authority of a man who considers himself the family's moral anchor and who uses Christmas dinner as the occasion to demonstrate this. The meal was good. The conversations were the usual ones. People talked about the year, and about work, and about the children, and about the usual subjects that fill the space at large family gatherings without requiring too much vulnerability from anyone. I ate and participated where it was natural, and observed where it was useful, and felt, as I felt every Christmas, the specific, complicated warmth of being in the house I loved among the people who were mine, even when they were frustrating. And then Gerald, who had been building toward something for about 20 minutes in the way that people build toward things when they have something they want to say and are finding the right moment to say it, said, "It is a blessing to have family who give back." He said, "Not everyone does." He said, "Some people take what this family has given them and disappear and reappear at Christmas to take more." He used the look. The table knew who he meant. I picked up my fork. I put it down. The quiet lasted 4 seconds. I know because I counted. Not consciously. In the way you count things when you are in a moment that is significant and your brain is recording it with unusual precision. 4 seconds of 42 people not speaking or moving or eating. And then I said the thing. I said, "I would like to say something about giving back." I said it in the voice I use when I am going to say something that requires everyone's attention and that I intend to say once and not repeat. The table, which had started to move again in those 4 seconds, went still again. I said, 5.5 years ago, I found out that Mom and Dad were 3 months behind on the mortgage. I said I did not tell anyone. I set up an arrangement to cover the payments anonymously, and I have been making them every month for 5 years. I said, Mom and Dad have been calling it a bank correction. It is not a bank correction. It is me, every month, for 60 months. I looked at my parents. My mother's face had gone through several things in rapid succession while I was speaking. Recognition first, then understanding, then something that was too large for a single expression and that she managed by pressing her mouth over her hand. My father had not moved. He was looking at the table, and I watched his jaw do the thing it does when he is holding something that is too large to hold easily. I looked at Gerald. I said, I do not say this to make a point about generosity. I say it because you made a claim about me in front of this family, and the claim was not accurate, and I have learned that inaccurate claims that go uncorrected become the story, and I am not willing for this to be the story. The table was silent. My cousin Marcus looked at his plate. My Aunt Patricia looked at her hands. Gerald looked at me with the expression of a man who has said something he cannot unsay and is processing what that means. My mother stood up. She crossed the table, which required going around 3 chairs and stepping between 2 cousins, and was not a graceful maneuver, and she came to where I was sitting, and she held my face in both her hands the way she had when I was a child, and she said, "My baby." She said it very quietly, just those 2 words, "My baby." I held her hands against my face, and I thought about 60 payments, and 60 firsts of the months, and 60 transfers, and the house that was still theirs because of 60 decisions I had made without telling anyone. My father came around the other side of the table and put his hand on my shoulder and did not say anything because he was not ready to say anything yet, and I understood that and did not need him to. Gerald apologized before he left. Not a long apology, a brief one. The apology of a man who has been publicly wrong about something and has understood it and is not going to make a production of the apology because the production would be for him and not for the person he wronged. I accepted it, not because it was sufficient, because acceptance was the correct response, and I had always known the difference between what was correct and what was sufficient, and had learned to lead with correct. My parents know now. We have had the conversation. My mother wanted to repay me. I said no. She said, "Nora." I said, "Mom, you raised me in that house." She said, "That is not the same." I said, "It is exactly the same." We went back and forth for a while in the way that people go back and forth when they both have a point and both know it. Eventually, she said, "Let me cook for you every Sunday." I said, "That sounds like a reasonable arrangement." She said, "Every Sunday for 60 Sundays." I said, "We can discuss the terms." She made me dinner the following Sunday. It was the best meal I had eaten in 5 years, maybe longer. Gerald does not make his observations at the dinner table anymore, not the ones with the meaningful look. He has found other topics. I appreciate the adjustment. Some corrections do not need to be discussed to be permanent, they just need to have happened. If you have been quietly doing something significant while being publicly called nothing, this story is for you. You do not owe the room a correction, but you are allowed to give one, calmly, at the right moment, with the fork already down. That's my story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your city in the comments. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.